let's go. All right, yesterday we started the golden calf. On page, Perek Lamed Beis Pasuk Aleph. 492. Correct. Okay. So before anything, you have to realize what is the Torah says ayin tachas ayin. What does it mean? What do the words mean?
An eye for an eye.
What does it mean? Monetary compensation. The Torah says that you whip a guy, it says Malkus Arboim, 40 lashes. What does it mean? 39. 39. 40 minus 1. The Gemara, it says Arboim Yakenu. It says you whip him 40 times. But it means 39. I'll tell you the biggest, the most astonishing one of all. It says, there's a pasuk in Nach that says, Ben Shana Shaul b'Molcho. Shaul was 1 year old when he took the reins. I mean, that is a precocious youngster. You know, at 1 year old, you become the reins. I mean, Shlomo HaMelech was 12. Everybody should have a chumash. Everybody take a chumash. Page 492. Shlomo HaMelech was 12 years old, and he was that's pretty good. Shaul was, it says Ben Shana Shaul b'Molcha is 1 year old. I mean, that's something, right? That's something. So, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, when he was 2 years old, so he knew the names of the Masechtas. Because the Stipler used to sing the Masechtas to them at the Shabbos table. On Friday, he had a song that he sang to them. He named the Masechtas. Instead of singing, he sang the Masechtas. So there was once a big Rav came to the house, and they say, so Reb Chaim told, the Stipler told Reb Chaim was 2 years old, 3 years old. He said, bring Maseches Yevamis. So the guy said, how could he possibly know? And he knew which he could already identify the Masechta. They said later in life, Reb Chaim's daughter was married to Big Talmud Chacham, so she walked over to the shelf where the Gemaras were on the shelf, and she started rearranging the Masechtas. So somebody said to her, how do you know the Masechtas? She said, well, that was a song you sang to us. You sang the order of the Masechtas, so I know the order of the Masechtas. Right? So you can be precocious, but to be 1 year old and be the king. So what does it mean, Ben Shana Shaul b'Malchus? So the Gemara says that he was as sinless when he became Shaul, was such a tzaddik, that he was as sinless when he became the king as a 1 year old child. Okay? I'm only using these examples that just because the Torah says something in a certain way doesn't mean that's the literal meaning. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Here, the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu was late coming down from the mountain by the calculation of the Jewish people. And then it says, the people on top of page 494, Vayikohel ha'om al Aharon, the people gathered on Aaron, Vayomer elav kuma seilanu Elohim, asher yelchu lefanenu ki zeh Moshe ha'ish asher helanu me'eretz Yitzrayim lo yadanu mehayalo. We don't know what happened to Moshe. Hold all the questions for a few minutes.
Yeah, but this is also from yesterday also.
Yeah, okay, so hold it from yesterday for a few minutes. Hold it till yesterday. Okay. So Aaron, now the commentaries as almost all commentaries point out, they clearly wanted a replacement for Moshe, not for God. They said, because we make a God that'll go before us because Moshe is missing. Now there are many different explanations here. And the standard approach, many of the commentaries, gentlemen, there should be chumashim. Please take chumashim. The standard approach is that they needed some sort of, they didn't want, since a human being could disappear on them, they wanted some sort of intermediary. They saw Moshe Rabbeinu as an intermediary between them and God. They want an intermediary that will not disappear. So make a solid intermediary for us. We're not worshiping the calf. We're using the word calf as a way of worshiping God, because one of the symbols in God's chariot is the ox, the shore. So they want this as a way of, which is what all avodah zarah started out as. All avodah zarah started out by using the idols as a medium, as an intermediary, but it's forbidden because it's an image. So they're in a panic state. Now, there are many different explanations here. Look what Aaron does, the first thing. Now, Aaron understands we got a situation here. There are two possibilities. Either I could say no, and the people will kill me, which Aaron would have had no problem with. There are many Jews in history who have given up their lives rather than worship idols. On the other hand, Aaron had seen Hur, who was Miriam's son, stand up to the people, and Hur did get killed. And Aaron realized that if I stand up to the people and they kill me, then they're going to have no chance of atonement because they're killing a prophet. Aaron was a Novi. And therefore he's got to choose the less of two evils. So the first thing he does is he says, Vayomer aleim porku nizmei azov asher be'oznei neshechem b'nechem u'vazechem. Get the golden trinkets and earrings from the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, v'haviu elai, and bring it to me. Now, why do you need to go to the wives, the sons, and the daughters? They had plenty of gold from Egypt.
To get the gold from your wife is difficult.
There you go. To get the gold, you're 100% correct. But not for the reason you think. It's because the women have not because, I love my gold. It's because the women have more they understand, what are you up to? The women were the ones on a higher level. They had a more natural intuition. They still do. Women have a much more natural intuition to anything spiritual, anything appropriate or inappropriate. And if the men come over, hey, wait, can I have your golden earrings? What do you need them for? Right? Oh, we just had this, we got this thing going down with an idol. Oh, yeah, over my dead body. That could be arranged. Right? So they easy. So Aaron first tries to do something that is going to cause a delay. Oh, vayisporku kol ha'ames nizvei azov asher be'ozneim. The people take off their own golden earrings. Vayavo elai. So they what do you call it? The people say, oh, I'm not going to mess around. That's never going to work, right? When it comes to the women getting the gold from the husbands, that's straight away. Yeah, that always, get the credit card from me, that's for sure. Yeah, here you go, lady. Right? I got to get it back from her. That's already hard. That's already a project. So the people come and they bring it to Aaron. Okay, that's the background. The point here is that these weren't idiots, and you have to remember that. These are people who just saw God's hand in Egypt. They just saw revelation. It isn't what it says it is. In other words, if you look at it, then it's no different than an eye for an eye, and it's no different than Shaul being 1 year old when he became the king. Right? It obviously can't mean what it says. It obviously doesn't mean what it says, so it's got to be, what does it mean? And the Torah is using, as usual, very, very condensed terms, very, very condensed terms that we should try to understand a broader idea here. Okay, now, there are a few what do you call it here? There are a few concepts that I want to show you. I tell you, some of the commentaries here, it's absolutely phenomenal. I got no other word for it. If you take a look at Pasuk Vav, Aaron says to the people, all right, and he throws in, he bakes this gold. If you take a look at Pasuk Daled, Vayikach miyodam vayotzar oso bacheret. There are different opinions whether or not he took all the gold and put it into a sack and threw it into the fire, and magically out comes this golden calf. But the word bacheret, when it says vayotzer, Rashi says two perushim here. Rashi says that it means tying it up in this kind of a cloth, and the other is that he actually chiseled it out of something. He made a cheret. Remember we said the chartumim in Egypt? The wise men are called chartumim. And the word choret means to carve. And there's speculation that the chartumim were the ones who did the Egyptian hieroglyphics, which are carved. Remember, there's always that guy, looking at that, he's got the head of a dog or something, the body of a snake and the head of a dog or something, all the weird, they're always like this, some sort of pose for the Egyptians. They're called chartumim, cheret. So there Rashi brings down another opinion that he actually carved it out. When you take gold, what do you do with gold? No. When you're forming it, what's it called? The guy who forms gold. You're what's that? Forging. You're forging, molding, whatever it is. He's a molder. But the word cheret is also related to the Hebrew word charata, which is regret. Vayotzer oso, Aaron formed it, bacheret, with regret. He's regretting that he's at the point that he has to do this. But Aaron has no choice. And then he says to the people, he's still trying to delay. Vayar pasuk, Vayar Aaron vayiven mizbeach lefanov. He builds an altar. Vayikra Aaron vayomar chag laHashem mocher. We're going to celebrate tomorrow. We're going to bring off, tomorrow's going to be a celebration, a holiday. And he says tomorrow. Why is he saying tomorrow? Because he's hoping that he could stall the people off for a little while. By that time, Moshe Rabbeinu will come down. We'll avoid the calamity. And then look at Pasuk Vav. What one of the Farshim says over here is, if you don't get the goosebumps from this, then the windows aren't open. Vayashkimu mimocharas. They wake up the next morning. Vayalu olos. They bring burnt offerings. Vayagishu shlomim. Shlomim are called peace offerings. Vayeshev ha'am lechol v'shoso. They sit down to eat and drink. Vayakubu litzachek. How does Art Scroll translate litzachek? To revel. If you take a look in Rashi, then we're going to show you what this means. Where's the Rashi? Litzachek on the left column of Rashi. 7 lines up. Correct. 8 lines up. Vayikubu litzachek. Everybody see it? Left column of Rashi, 8 lines from the bottom, right in the middle. Litzachek. Yesh b'mashma hazeh gilui arayos. There's an implication. Anytime it talks about litzachek, it implies immorality. Kibo shenemar litzachek bi, which is a quote from Mrs. Potiphar. Hold all the questions for a few minutes. Mrs. Potiphar. Mrs. Potiphar said when she accused Yosef that she said that he was litzachek bi, which was immorality. V'shvichus damim, and spilling of blood. And it says by Yishmael that when Sarah Imenos looked at Yishmael, and she didn't look at this influence, it says that he was mitzachek. And Rashi there says also that it's an implication of immorality, idol worship, and murder. Right? So all the negative things is in litzachek. Okay. So what's going on here? Says that one of the Meforshim, I forgot who it is, every idealism that's ever been in the world, whether it's communism or thisism or thatism or whatever the ism is always meant to be the thing that's going to solve all the ills of mankind, right? Communism is going to make everybody's going to be happy. And it's all about the cause, right? It's all about, we're all devoted to the cause. So what do the people do over here? It's all l'shem shemayim. Right? We're all doing it for the sake, it's only with the most purest motivations. All the pure motivations. Look at how the motivations work. And this is an indication of everything that's ever happened in history. How does it start out? Vayalu olos. They bring olos, a burnt offering. You know what a burnt offering is? You take a sacrifice, you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, and it's burnt on the altar. All of it goes on the altar. All l'shem shemayim. What's the next step? Vayagishu shlomim. Now shlomim are peace offerings. Some of it is burnt on the altar, and some the Kohanim and the owners get to eat. Oh, so there's already a little personal involvement, a little personal benefit. What's the next step? Vayeshevam lechol v'shoso. Then the people sit down to eat and drink. That's all personal involvement. Nothing about it. And then what's the next step? Vayikumu litzachek. Then it's already sinful involvement, sinful personal involvement. That's every movement in the history of the world has always been. It's for the good, for the good of the team, right? For the good of the cause. Till we purge about 20 million Russians or Chinese. How many did what's his name kill? Mao. How many Chinese did he kill? Oh, they have no way of knowing. They have no way of knowing. They've already been replaced in the last week, right? So we have no way of knowing. But at the end of the day, you know, they can't do a census in China. They can't do a census. Right now there's 1,400,000,000. Sorry, 1,450,000,000. Sorry, 1,500,000,000. Sorry, 1,600,000,000. They actually claim the India is gonna bypass them this year. Yeah. I think this year India is supposed to surpass them way. Yeah, India's going to surpass them. At the end of the day, hold all the questions. Guys, hold all the questions. At the end of the day, the Torah is telling you what happened then happens all the time. What happened then has happened through it. There's just a projected history. Torah is timeless. This is what always happens. Then the leaders of the communist movement, they all somehow had very nice homes, very nice mansions and boats, and what do you call it? The leaders of communism, where everybody else is eating potatoes. They used to say, what's 300 feet long and eats potatoes? A line of people in Russia waiting to buy meat. Right? The way everybody, people are literally starving to death in Russia, And the guys at the top, they're living the life of Riley over there. Putin has some sort of in the Black Sea. He's got some sort of palace over there with a hockey rink underneath. And the guy's got what do you call it? He's got a stadium there, a personal stadium over there. That's what all movements have been like that. All movements have been. It's all about idealism, and it ends up being something where it's all selfishness and eventually gets to immorality. Number one. Number two, the commentaries point out that it's always about immorality. Every activity, every sort of involved, at the end of the day, when people leave Torah, when people abandon the life of Torah, philosophically, I don't know, I can't sleep at night because I don't know how free choice versus predetermination. I got all the and I can't. I'm bothered by the Holocaust, and I'm bothered by whether or not we come from gorillas and a big bang and everything else. And at the end of the day, so what's that got to do? So you abandon that, and then you end up chasing. Then you end up behaving immorally. What's one thing got to do with the other? The answer is that's what the motivation was to begin with. That's why the guy came to Reb Chaim, the famous story of Reb Chaim Brisker. Can we open the windows over there? Thank you. And the door. Netanel, the door. Door l'dor yeshabach ma'asecha. What do you call it? The guy came to Reb Chaim, the famous story guy came to Reb Chaim Brisker. He says he doesn't believe. He doesn't believe he's a sinner because he doesn't believe, because he's got questions. So Reb Chaim Brisker said to him, what came first, the sinning or the questions? First I want to sin, and because I want to sin, now all of a sudden I'm not convinced of this, and I'm not convinced of that, I'm not convinced of the other. I had two guys who once came into the yeshiva here. They were what do you call it? They claimed to be atheists or agnostics or whatever it was. So I said, these two guys, two young guys, they were schmoozing for a while. I said to them, do you guys believe in God? So one guy goes, no. The other guy goes, I sure do, Tom. So it became imminently clear to me that they never really discussed the subject, because that's something that you probably would have known about each other before sitting down and talking to me. So the great philosophers over here don't even know whether or not they believe in God. So the all movements, it's all the excuses, it's all because of immorality. We even find that by the one sage in the Gemara. Who was the one sage that was OTD? You know what OTD stands for, don't you? No. Off the derech. You never heard of that? Yeah, he went. Not Reish Lakish started OTD, but then he came back. He became Reish Lakish. There's the Tosfos says that Reish Lakish was an FFB. Tosfos says that Reish Lakish was an FFB, and then he went off, and then he came back. But it sounds like the Gemara that he started off difficult, then he came back. Whatever the case, who was it who went off eventually?
Amor, I forgot his name.
A good, you're close. It was a Tana. It was a Tana.
He was riding on the horse.
Yeah, correct. He was riding on the horse. He was riding a horse, and he said to somebody, "Pick up that mitzvah for me." Right? No. I think you're thinking about mitzvah. But you're right. You're right. Yeah, just giving you a hard time. He was riding on the horse, and Rabbi Meir was following him. What was his name? Anybody remember? Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha ben Avuya, who was then given the nickname Acher. Acher means the other one, the one we don't talk about, like the one we don't talk, like my younger brother, like the one we don't talk about. He's Acher. So Elisha ben Avuya, it says that when he saw a father said to his son, go up the ladder and send away the mother bird, both of which were told, honoring your father and sending away the mother bird, the Torah says, that you live long. And the kid went up the ladder, sent away the mother bird, and then he fell down, he fell to his death. So Elisha ben Avuya said that the Torah can't be true, and he immediately forsook the Torah. And what's the first thing he did? He got involved in immorality. That's what the Gemara says. What's one thing got to do with the other? I mean, why don't you go get some Kentucky Fried Chicken? The answer is because the first thing that happens is the immorality. Now, which came first? And not only that, his own grandson, Elisha ben Avuya's grandson, then reconciled the contradiction. His own grandson came along and said, well, when the Torah said that you should live long, it was talking about life in the world to come. And the Gemara says that if he would have learned it like his grandson, so then he wouldn't have had this philosophical problem. So what was his problem? What came first, the chicken or the philosophy? Right. The answer is that he had the moral. Please hold for a few minutes. I'll get to all the questions, maybe. What do you call it? So Elisha ben that's what the Torah is saying over here. That's where all movements end up. Okay? Yes. Question.
So
Nathaniel, can I try to open the door?
I recently I recently started like looking into the.
What's the question?
Mitzvah.
What's the question?
I don't understand. So basically, I heard that you're supposed, when you send off the mother bird and you carry the eggs, you're supposed to get long life, have a long life in this life, no?
So there is an opinion that, but there are also mitigating circumstances. The Gemara says that it's talking about life in the world to come. But there are mitigating circumstances, even those mitzvahs which do indicate life in this world. Even, for example, it says if you tithe your money 10%, you get rich. All right? If you give 20%, if you tithe your money, you'll get rich. A lot of people I know who tithe their money and haven't gotten rich. Why? Because there are other mitzvahs that say that if you do this, you're going to lose your money. So if you tithe your money to get rich, but you also lend with interest, then you're going to lose your money. So now, how does it work? There's a counterbalance. Even more than that. The Gemara says if you answer Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah with all your strength, which means kavana, it doesn't mean disrupting the entire show. Hold it. If you answer Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and you score a couple of touchdowns while you're answering Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. It means with all your kavana. So then you'll have 70 good years of life. How do you like that? On the other hand, the Gemara says if you attend the wedding and you make dirty jokes, then you get 70 bad years. So what if a guy davens Ma'ariv at the wedding, answers Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and then makes dirty jokes? Then what happens?
Cancelled.
Then you're going to have this. Then you got this. What do you call it? You got a conflict over there.
You have to have an accountant, no?
Which at the end of the day, the only accountant we have is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a supercomputer. Hold all the questions. I want to go on. There are a few points here. That I want to get to. Okay. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go down. V'yomer Hashem al Moshe lech red. Go down, which Chazal say that means go down from your status. You were given the leadership role, and you were given the status of a king. Moshe Rabbeinu given the status of a king for the good of the Jewish people. Their level drops, so your level drops. And Kodesh Baruch Hu then talks about how the Jewish people have gone and they've quickly gone and made this God which they shouldn't have done. And then in Pasuk Tes, there's a identification of who we are, gentlemen. Vayomer Hashem Moshe Ra'isi es ha'am hazeh ve'hinei am kshei orefu. I see these people, they are a stiff-necked people, what we call in English stubborn. Thank you, Echo. I said stubborn. I didn't say chutzpah. I said stubborn.
What's the difference?
The difference is that what you're doing now is chutzpah, not stubborn. The difference is that chutzpah has a completely different implication. If you let me explain that, I'll tell you what the difference is. Stubborn means that it's like any other trait. If I say somebody got self-confidence, is that a positive or a negative? The answer is, it depends how you use it. If somebody has self-esteem, is that a positive or is it a negative? It depends how you use it. If somebody has pride, is it a positive? Depends. If I'm proud and I don't let other people, if I'm proud and I don't let other people push me around and influence me negatively because I'm proud of being then it could be very positive. Just about any trait you mention, any quality, any character trait you mention can be used positively and negatively. The Jewish people by nature are stiff-necked. Stiff-necked could be positive and it could be negative. The positive use of stiff-necked, of being an am kshei orev, is what's allowed us to survive all these years. Because when Jews have faced the sword and they've been told to bow down to idols, they've been very, very abstinent, and they've said, "No, I'm not going to do that." They have said, "I'm not going to bow down. I'll die rather than do it." That takes a tremendous amount of stiff-neckedness. And if a person isn't willing to give in to the noise to the societal pressure, that means you're stiff-necked in a positive way. On the other hand, if somebody is trying to explain something to you in the Gemara, and you refuse to accept their explanation, even though their explanation is logical because you think that you know better, then you're being stiff-necked in a negative way. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu refers to them as stiff-necked people. The definition of chutzpah is difficult to define chutzpah. Chutzpah generally means, because parents are always saying, I can't tolerate chutzpah. Where is chutzpah? Where's the line of chutzpah? If the mother says to get put in your pajamas and says no. Or it's chutzpah. You know, if you're trying to pull into a what do you call it? You're trying to back your car into a lot, into a parking space, and some guy zips in. It's a chutzpah. I don't know. You know, chutzpah. Anything can be called chutzpah, and with children especially. Before labeling anything chutzpah, that was our policy. Before if a kid says put on your pajamas, says no. Right? First, find out is something bothering him. Is he tired? Is he cranky? Adults are also chutzpahdik, right? Right? When you're tired and cranky, you're not very. Just because somebody's unpleasant and uncooperative doesn't make a chutzpah. Where that line is exactly, it's hard to say where the line is exactly. When you're out of line, it's one of those things in life you know it when you could identify it. You'll know it when you see it, right? But not everything is chutzpah. A guy who's zipping in underneath you, is that chutzpah or is that selfishness? He needs a parking space too. You know, you're taking a sweet old time over there, and the guy cuts you off in traffic, or a guy passes the entire line and then tries to cut in. Is that chutzpah or self-survival? You know, it's very difficult to say. It's very difficult to say. By the way, in Israel, they now passed the law that if you get caught doing that, you get fined. You get a ticket. If there's a line of people, there's some places in Yerushalayim where there's always this line. There's always look. If this was L.A., people would be getting shot. But in Israel, there's always this line, and then you got the people who go on the outside lane. You know, they try cutting in. If the cops catch you now, they pass the law that if they catch you doing that, they get I think it's a 500 or 750 shekel fine. Doesn't mean people aren't doing it, right? But sometimes it is. But what do you call it? At the end of the day, it's difficult to define. Now I want you to see something. So that's what it says there in Am Ksheorf. Now take a look at Pasuk Yud. Skip down now. Skip down to Pasuk Tesvav. Vayifen vayered Moshe. 3 lines from the bottom on 496. Vayifen vayered Moshe binahar. Moshe turns and he comes down from the mountain. Ushnei luchos ha'edus biyado. He's got the 2 tablets of stone in his hand. Luchos ksuvim mishnei evreim. They're written from both sides. Mizeu mizehem ksuvim. They could be read from both sides. It's emphasizing what the luchos are. Ve'aluchos ma'aseh Elokim hema. They're made by God. This is what the Jewish people lost. You got luchos. They're supernatural. Any way you turn them, it's like the original Rubik's Cube, right? Any way you turn the luchos, you could read them. Right? From every direction, you could read them without having to spin them. In other words, the Gemara says the mem and samach of the luchos were standing by miraculously, because a samach, picture this paper. This is one of the luchos. Now, if I carve out a samach over here, so what's the problem going to be?
A piece in the middle.
The piece in the middle, the piece in the middle. What's holding it up? I've chiseled out around it, and it stayed in the middle, floating in the middle, miraculously. This is Ma'aseh Elokim. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. And don't start that gravity and this. There it was, staying in the middle. Now, take a look what happens. Ve'aluchos Ma'aseh Elokim hema michtav Elokim hu chorus al haluchos. The writing is God's writing carved on the luchos. And the Gemara says, don't read it as chorus, which the Gemara sometimes does. The Gemara will sometimes tell you, because remember, in the Sefer Torah, there are no vowels. The tradition says we pronounce it as chorus. But if you take away the shva and replace it with a tzere, you can read it as cherus, which means what? What's cherus, gentlemen? Anyone know what cherus is? Freedom. Freedom. The Gemara says, al tikre chorus.
Freedom!
Yeah. Well, chutzpah anyway. The Gemara says, al tikre, or stiff neck. The Gemara says, al tikre chorus. Don't read it. Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, don't read it as chorus. Read it as cherus. Freedom. And the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, no one is as free. Ein lecha ben chorin elamisha osek b'Torah. Nobody is free except the person who is involved in Torah study. I like that. I mean, it looks to me like there's some freedom in all. What's the definition of freedom, by the way? You know what the definition of freedom is? Freedom means that your time belongs to yourself. As soon as your time does not belong to yourself, you're a slave, you're an employee, you're married. As soon as your time does not belong to yourself, you are not free. Right? That's the definition of freedom. Here the Torah says there's a different freedom. The only free person is a person who is involved in Torah study. Why? I mean, I see guys who are involved in Torah study. I don't know that they're free. To the contrary, they look to me like the people who feel the most obligations. They're always trying to get dominion, and they're always trying to learn, and they're always thinking about their obligations. Why are they the freest people? Because the Torah frees you from your desires. A person who's got any addiction at all, whether you're addicted to caffeine, or if you're addicted to nicotine, or you're addicted to drugs, or you're addicted to gambling, or you're addicted to anything else, you're not free. You're being ruled. It's saying you're not ruling it, it's ruling you. A person who has any sort of desires that are controlling him, whatever those desires are, whether it's desires to eat certain foods or desires to look at certain things, that he's not free, he's a slave. He's a slave to his desires. The only way to get free is through Torah study. Torah study frees us. So it comes along and says Chorus. Now, what is Yoshua? Yoshua Vayishma. Now pay attention carefully. Pasuk Yud Zayin. We're going to go to two psukim now. Vayishma Yoshua es kol ha'am bereo. Yoshua hears the people making noise. Like the word truah, like we have on Rosh Hashanah, tkiya, truah, bereo comes in the same root. He hears the people making noise. They're whooping it up. Vayomer el Moshe kol milchama b'machana. There's a sound of battle. I hear the sound of battle in the camp. Vayomer, Moshe says to him, Ein kol anos gvura. That's not the sound of victorious people whipping. You know, when the winning team goes, yeah, they start yelling. The Ein kol anos chalusha. That's not the lamenting of the losers. Kol anos anochi shavet. It's just the sound of people who are reveling. So there's a back and forth between Moshe and Yoshua over here. So one of the Mefarshim says, first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu over here had a certain, I don't want to call it a criticism, but a certain, what would be the word, a demand. He's making a demand of Yoshua. Yoshua says, hey, I hear the sound of a battle. Moshe says, that's not the sound of the victors, it's not the sound of the defeated, that's just the sound of people whooping around. What is Moshe trying to communicate to Yeshua? Moshe is saying to Yeshua, look, you're going to be the leader of the Jewish people. You're the leader after me. A leader has to be able to hear the sound of the people. You have to be able to tell. As a leader, you got to be able to tell what that sound is. You know what that means? As a parent, you'll find out when you guys have kids, you hear the kids playing. You hear the kids are playing. There's a sound as a parent that you can hear. Right now they're playing nicely, they're roughing around a little bit. It's even the laughter of the kids. There's laughter. Okay, they're having a good time. Okay, getting a little rough. Okay, there's something naughty happening. Right? We used to hear the kids playing outside. Okay, go break it up, guys. Somebody's doing somebody's trying to pull someone's pants down in the back room. That's usually what's happening. That's what parents could tell. Little kids and somebody's. It's a certain tone. It's a note that you learn. You could tell. You can tell by the note. You can tell by the sound what something's happening that shouldn't be happening over there. You're the leader of the people. You have to hear the sound of the people. What kind of sound? What are you hearing over there? Yoshua, what are you hearing over there? Are you hearing over there the sound of war? Or you're hearing people who are losing their commitment to God? What are you hearing over there? And as a leader, you're responsible. But at the deeper level, what that really means is that when you have a position of leadership, again, I use the example of the rabbi of the shul, you have to be able to take the pulse of the people. What can the people handle right now? Let's say you're running an institution. This happens in yeshivas all the time. In the mainstream yeshiva system, this happens all the time. You want to make rules in your yeshiva. So if we were in Volozhin 200 years ago in Volozhin, or 180 years ago in Volozhin, we could make a rule, no smartphones. And in the 21st century, you can't make a rule like that.
Why?
Maybe you can make a rule that they have to have filters on your phones. Because you always have to know whether it's something that is beyond the capability of the people. What Chazal, even when Chazal wanted to make a takana, when the Gemara said they wanted to institute a rabbinic law, they took into account, there's a concept called Gzeira She'ena Tzibur Yochol Lamod Ba. It's a decree that, do you know that they made a decree that you can't drink non-Jewish wine, right? Do you know they made a non-Jewish wine, that a goy is touched, a goy is opened the bottle. You can't drink a non-Jewish wine. They also made a decree that you can't have non-Jewish oil. And then they rescinded the decree. Why? Because they saw the people couldn't hold by it. So there's something that you have to weigh out. There's something as the leader, you got to hear the sound of the people. You have to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Number one. Number two, second point here. I got the wrong page, sorry. Yeah, number two, if you look at Targum Onkelos, top line of Onkelos, if you find it, please show the person next to you. Ushma Yehoshua Yaskol Amma, everybody see that on page 498, top line of Onkelos. Ushma Yehoshua Yaskol Amma Kadmi Yabvin. He heard the people making noise. Now, the word miyabvin, a yibava, is really a lament. It's got a sad connotation. And if you look at Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, he says, kad miyadvin bechedvasa. They were lamenting in joy. It's like almost an oxymoron. You know, when Israel and the Palestinians, when they worked out when Yasser Arafat, he should rest in pieces, but when Yasser Arafat, when they made the peace agreement, they signed the peace treaty. Who was it? Rabbi and Yasser Arafat that signed the peace treaty. So then Arafat, shortly after, they signed the treaty. Who was the president at the time? Was Clinton. So they signed the peace treaty. So a short while later, Arafat was giving a speech in South Africa, and he called for a jihad on Jerusalem. So the Israelis were upset because a jihad means a holy war. So the Israelis were upset. So they said to the Americans, "Hey, we just signed a peace treaty. He's calling for a jihad." So the Americans said to Arafat, adjust it. Like the politicians always said, my words were taken out of context. So Arafat said, "I meant a jihad of peace." Now, a jihad of peace is like saying, well, we're going to have just a pleasant nuclear war. We're just going to have a pleasant nuke right now. Just enjoy it. Right? So enjoy the mushroom. So enjoy the way. It's not a poisonous mushroom. It's worse, right? So enjoy. Yeah. It's an oxymoron. So the Torah says Yoshua heard the people bireo. And the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel said, miyavin bechedvasa. They were lamenting in joy, in happiness. What does lamenting in happiness mean? So the commentaries say, you know what? No Jew who has been raised with Torah or has been exposed to Torah and then leaves it can never really enjoy himself. Because in his heart of hearts, he knows that there's going to be accountability. He knows, even while they're sinning, they can't really enjoy it. There's joy, but there's a lamenting. They're lamenting in joy. Something inside's bothering you, because you know that you're going to get zapped for this. They had a guy, I told you about the guy from Slobodka Yeshiva? There was a guy. Which one? So there was a guy, you've heard of the Slobodka Yeshiva, right? Back in Europe, the Slobodka Yeshiva. So there was a Jew in South Africa, this is before the war. There was a Jew in South Africa who was very wealthy, and he used to donate money to yeshivas. He supported a lot of yeshivas, but he himself was not observant at all. So the Slobodka Yeshiva heard about this guy, so they sent, and he had learned in Slobodka, then he went off. So the Slobodka Yeshiva sent their fundraiser to South Africa to see if they could get some money out of this guy. So they figured, listen, the guy supports yeshivas, he's certainly going to give money to the Slobodka Yeshiva. So he goes to South Africa, and he meets this guy, and he says, hi, I'm collecting for Slobodka. So he says, listen, I give money to a lot of yeshivas. I learned in Slobodka, and I know how important Torah study is, and I know how important it is to support. I give money to a lot of yeshivas. I'm not giving a dime to Slobodka. So the guy says, but you learned in Slobodka. He says, that's exactly, Slobodka ruined my life. I'm secular. I'm involved in everything in this world that this world has to offer, and I can't enjoy any of it because I learned in Slobodka and I know exactly what's going to happen to me afterwards. So Slobodka ruined my life. I'm not giving Slobodka a dime. Right? That's what miyabin bechedvasa is, number one. Number two, when you've seen people trying to get involved in Torah, the uninitiated. So what happens? You come into a yeshiva like this, you're to a certain extent brainwashed. You were supposed to say, oh, really? Yeah, well, that's part of the brainwashing. You come into yeshiva, you're taught Torah, you ask questions, you get answers, you have a discussion, you find out, sit down with this one, sit down with that one, you try, you think about it, and you go back and forth. When trying to distract people, what do you always find? Noise. It's a noisy background. There's always noise. Right? You walk into any club in the world, what's the first thing you hear? Boom, 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 there's a beat. Right? Boom, boom. Because with the beat, then mixed with alcohol, but the beat, you can't think straight, which is exactly the point. Let's abandon all rational thought. When it comes to Torah, how's Torah presented? Very, very pleasantly, very quietly. Okay, you may yell at your chavrusa a little bit. But generally, it's a calm environment, a calm atmosphere, where people can speak to each other logically, rationally, and try to work things out. Yet what do you find by the Egel? And again, the Torah is just showing you what's going to be going on through history. What's the first thing that happens? There's noise. Yoshua hears noise. Why is there noise? Noise blocks out rational thought. And everything in life that you shouldn't do, almost everything that shouldn't be done, invite a tremendous amount of noise. And it's not only noise, it's not only a physical noise. It's the noise of a society. Society makes noise over materialism. Society makes noise over money. Oh, money, materialism. Society makes noise over feminism. Feminism, yeah, be a man, even if you're a woman, even if your name is Lisa. Make kiddush. The society makes noise about it. And if a person would stop and think rationally, hey, lady, I know people where the husband makes the kiddush, the wife makes the hamotzi, the Shabbos table. Really?
Yeah. Sure.
Really? Is it mutter? It's not usser. It's not done. It's also not usser to. It's not us. It's also not usser to stand. It's also to draw circles on the wall with your finger without making. Just to do that. You can do that all day long if you want, right? It's certainly not. It's wrong, but it's not usser. Like, hey, well, you're not happy with your role. Does your husband bake some of the challahs? I mean, how does that work? What's your problem? You're not happy with your role because society said you're not supposed to be happy with your role. Are you really not happy? Why don't you talk to the frum women? People always tell us what the frum women should be thinking. Oh, those poor frum women, they're so unhappy. I don't know, I haven't seen too many frum women unhappy. They're generally happy with their role. You're telling them they shouldn't be happy. Right? So what is that? That's just noise. You're telling me I should pursue money for money's sake. Yeah, I gotta make money for what? Then you can make more money. I mean, how much? Honestly, how much money how much do you need? At a certain point, I mean, honestly, what is it that Jeff Bezos is trying to do right now? Oh, the poor guy lost, what do you call it? What's his name? The other Michiganer, Musk. Musk lost, he lost $150 billion. I almost feel bad for the guy. So now he's only got $150 billion left, something like that. What exactly are you trying to do? What are you trying to, where are you going with this? So it's the noise of a society that distracts us. That's the lesson. That's why it's a timeless Torah. Tomorrow I want to start Parshas Vayakal. There's one more thought in Parshas, possibly the most important, possibly the most, a remarkable speaking to all of us. So I want to finish that in Sisa, and then I want to go on to Parshas Vayakal. Yes, question?
Yeah, the question is, you were saying that the Jews were all like, at the time when they were by Har Sinai, they were all like Adam and Eve, right?
Right.
They were getting food, they were getting like pretty much pampered from Hashem.
Right.
So why couldn't they just like wait one more day,
It's a good question. The answer is, anytime you ask a question, we can only project and speculate. But what the commentaries do say is there's a sense of panic. You can't judge people when they're panicked. You can't judge people when they're panicked. I had a friend in high school who was the toughest, strongest, a rough guy, and he was a tough guy. And what do you call it? He could hit hard, right? And I once walked into the ping pong room. he was standing on the ping pong table, pointing, get that thing out of here. The mouse had gotten into the ping pong room. When the guy was standing, now my wife is also not crazy. You know, women could get panicky with mice. My wife, my mother, that I understand. This guy was up, I told you, I walked in, he's on the ping pong. I didn't know what it was. You know, for me, if it would be a cobra, I'd be on the table. You know, it was a mouse. You can't judge a person when they're panicked. You can't judge a person. The people are panicked. What are we going to do? I got a wife and children here. The guy, our leader, disappeared. We're out we're stuck in a desert over here. What are we going to do? Can't judge people when they're panicked. Should they have waited? Yes. A lot of people should do a lot of things in life, and they get panicked and do something different because you're panicked. And then you got the other guy hollering you, "Don't panic!" you know, who's panicking himself. Right, there was what he called. This was not a joke. And you heard about in Beitar. Did you hear about what happened in Beitar? There was a terrorist in Beitar. The guy with the bike, and the police. I have a daughter living in Beitar, so the police were in Beitar, and they said, everybody stay in your house, lock your doors, stay in your house. They kept going around, they didn't catch the guy for hours. And I spoke to my daughter. We didn't even know about it. We only found out about it in the middle. My wife found out about it, and then we called my daughter. My daughter said she was absolutely panicked. And you know, my son-in-law, you know, he picked up a hammer, I think, or a knife. You know, he had a knife with him, which I was thinking, what would I do? What would you do? There's a guy loose. What would you do? I'd definitely first thing I'd do is pick up a hammer, a baseball bat, and sit by the door. You know, they pick up something and just sit by the door. You know, and then, you know, if you hear somebody messing with the door, you just start. You know, you're desperate. Is that the best thing to do? I don't know. I don't even know what the best thing is. But you're panicked. She was panicked. No, yeah, she was panicked. Her mother-in-law called her up, and she was panicked. And everybody was panicked. Not a joke. Not a joke. All right. See you tomorrow.